Welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Reed Stone. Alongside me is my co host, Bob Foley, and our guest for this episode is Yasmin Nguyen. Yasmin is an author, a Joy Ambassador, and the co founder of the Retirement Innovation Lab. Yasmin's transformation from the edge of burnout to a beacon of joy is truly inspiring. After hitting rock bottom, he embarked on an 18-month road trip that transformed his outlook on life, teaching him the valuable lessons of creating joy in the simplest moments. His profound discoveries became the foundation of his book, The Game of Joy, a guide to cultivating fulfillment amidst life's storms and transitions. Witnessing his parents face the challenges of retirement, Yasmin, alongside his mentor Kathleen, dove deep into understanding the unique struggles of the retirement journey. Through heartfelt conversations with hundreds of retirees, they uncovered a widespread need for guidance and support during this transitional phase of life. Now, Yasmin dedicates his life to inspiring joy, particularly among retirees, empowering them to embrace this new chapter with possibilities and purpose. Through a unique approach that integrates personalized, impactful, and comprehensive solutions, Yasmin and his team reimagine the retirement journey by offering accessible, practical tools to help organizations, financial professionals, and retirees thoughtfully plan and navigate their joyful retirement journeys. Recently, Yasmin gave a great presentation about joy at the Retirement Coaches Association conference. Bob and I are both members of the Retirement Coaches Association. Today, we're going to chat with Yasmin about the topic of joy, his road trip, his book, and the tools he has created for financial advisors to help clients transition into retirement. Welcome, Yasmin. We're glad to have you on today to talk about joy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Reed and Bob. Thanks for having me here. I'm just delighted to have this conversation with you and share some insights with your community. And so I'm really honored to be here. Thank you.
So, from reading your bio and creating your intro, I wanted to start with because I think this is a really fascinating part of your transition and your personal journey too. Is tell us about the 18-month road trip that you took and why you decided to do that. Were you searching for something? What was the goal of the road trip?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting. Sometimes when we take journeys or trips, it's part of a calling that we have. And for me, growing up most of my life as an achiever, I found myself totally burnt out about 7 years ago. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 3 decades now, juggling a lot of the responsibilities, but I found myself in a place where I was constantly trying to please others. I was constantly trying to prove myself and I neglected to really take time for myself. And that was when I realized that looking at my life, I wasn't happy and I didn't know what joy was. And so I just had this inspiration to put everything into storage, hop in my car, and set on a 2 year road trip to drive around the country and learn about joy. And I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes when we get to a certain point in our life when we're like, wow, what's the point in what I'm doing? Sometimes we have these moments of inspiration or craziness that we step into. So that's what started that. And it started with planning initially a road trip to navigate the extreme weathers. So I tried to stay as far south as possible during the winters and further north during the summers here, but had just an incredible experience of discovery, connecting with people, getting immersed in all of these different lives. And I stayed with over 50 different families in their homes to experience what joy looks like through their eyes, as well as some of the challenges. And it was the most incredible time of my life where literally each week felt I lived like an entire month's worth of life. And each month felt like I lived several months as well too.
So, as you went on this journey and you stayed at these different locations with friends, with other families around the country, what are some of the important lessons you learned during your trip? What were some of the takeaways that you brought home with you about joy?
Well, initially, when I set on this trip, I was looking for ways to experience or find joy. And as I was looking out there, each time I had an experience, it made me realize that joy comes in all of these different forms. For example, when I was staying with a friend in Phoenix, I got a chance to witness what it's like to take kids to school and to go to the soccer games because I don't have a family, but to be able to witness that as a form of joy. When I was in Detroit, I got a chance to stay with some friends who were single, they're retired, and we played tennis at the country club. We went on the boat on the lake, and we had a different experience. And then, so each time I got immersed in a different environment, it opened my eyes to all the possibilities that joy could be. And then also there was the realizing that joy also comes on the other side of disappointment and frustration as well. I remember when I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was supposed to go to Washington, D.C. And and then after that, I was supposed to go to, or I had planned to go to Philadelphia, New York, and then to Boston. So there was at least a an itinerary. Now, my plans for Washington fell through. And so I was really frustrated. I was getting concerned that if I don't get to Washington, how am I going to continue on my plan? And it was in that moment of what I call unjoy, which I'll share a little bit more about, and frustration that I randomly had a call from a friend down in Miami, and she said, "Hey, why don't you come down and visit us?" And I thought, wow, from Charlotte to Miami, that's like a 14-hour detour in the opposite direction. And so I thought, you know, if the purpose of my journey is to follow the joy and to discover joy, I always knew that it was joyful to spend time with her. So I took that detour, drove all the way down, and by the time I got to Miami late that evening, we sat down and had dinner together, her and her partner. And she asked me, "What do you want to do here in Miami?" And I said, quite honestly, I didn't even have Florida on my map. And so I said, but I hear that there's great Cuban food and culture, and if we could go out and eat and experience some of that, I'd love that. And so she said, "Great, we'll make plans to do so." Couple days later, we're in her office. I'm helping her with some marketing strategy, and I said, "Hey, have you thought about creating videos to help your clients?" And her client, and she had a business that she planned travel itineraries for clients to go to Spain and Italy and Portugal and other places. And so I said, all you got to do is grab a camera, ask some questions, and edit the video. And then her partner, who was sitting next to us, he says, "You want to go to Cuba this weekend?" And I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, you want to go to Cuba?" I'm like, "Of course." And so she hops on within 30 minutes, books all of our travel itinerary. And then 3 days later, we're in Havana for an incredible, life-changing 4 days where we got a chance to visit the countryside, and we got a chance to, we had a Cuban chef prepare meals and teach us how to cook, and unbelievable experience. And the lesson that I learned from that is sometimes that we may have expectations, but if we let go of the attachment to how things have to come, that's on the opposite side of that. We can experience unexpected joy as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes the joy comes through those detours
Hmm.
that we often have to take in life. So yeah,
Ab
that's a great story. So I wanted
Absolutely.
to from your intro to Yasmin, I also wanted to understand what you learned from your parents' retirement and how that's maybe impacted your thinking on the retirement journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. We often think that retirement is a time where we finally get to be free. We can go play golf all day or we can travel, and the reality that I've discovered and I've witnessed with my parents is they've prepared financially for this journey. They unfortunately weren't prepared for all the different aspects of life that happens during this phase, whether it be health challenges and change in the friendships as well. And so after completing my journey around the country to learn about all these ways that bring joy, I thought that being with them, that they would be experiencing all this joy, and that was anything but the case. I found that they were sitting at home watching TV for 40 hours plus a week. Uh,
Mm.
Parents
Wow.
also having various different decline in health, cognitive, physical decline as well too. Their circle of friends have completely dwindled, and I think that part of that was the pandemic really drew them within, and now they're
Hmm.
kind of stuck in a very lonely, isolated world. And also there's a lack of sense of purpose and a sense of direction and meaning. And so it just really hit home, and I felt really sad to see that why is this the situation when there's so much joy that's out there. And especially as I learned lessons about joy, how it's not something that we go out there and we search for, but joy is something that we have an opportunity to create. And in doing so, why aren't they creating joy? And so that's what really got me curious about retirement. And is it just my parents or is this universal? And through my research, through reaching out to mentors and colleagues, I realized that this is not unusual, and that many people are struggling because they are unprepared for the the ups and downs of this retirement journey, upwards of potentially 30 years of life that they are not ready to take on.
Now, Jasmine, were you able to disrupt your parents' path there when they were going when they were going towards despair rather than joy?
Uh, that's a great question, Bob. I have tried to, and there are moments in which I can spark a new idea or path. I mean, I ended up actually moving back in with them to help take care of them, and so I see them on a day-to-day basis. And as much as I can intervene by taking them out on the lake and kayak, which is something they've never done, to introducing them to new experiences. They experience joy in that moment, but also I'm aware of the inertia of the many years of habits that keep them back where they are. And
Right.
so it's this I have to constantly um, intervene or introduce or activate some of this joy. I think the other aspect of it, Bob, is that over the course of our lives, we've developed and we've inherited so many different beliefs around ourselves, around aging, that we believe that, oh, well, I'm just too old. I can't move my body anymore. I'm just too this, I'm too that, or whatever it is, these limitations. And these limitations can be crippling in many ways, that it really takes a big shift to be able to send them on a different trajectory. So as much as I can, I try to introduce experiences and support them, but I also realize that at this stage, sometimes you can do the best, you try to do the best that you can.
No, no, absolutely. And that's always what we've found to be the biggest block
Hmm.
is that people get into this well, they get into this rhythm about
Hmm.
how they live their lives, and nobody ever told them about what came after spring break for seniors. All right.
Right.
And they as you say, they nestle in and they get in their nest and they watch TV for actually it's 48 hours is the average
Yeah.
to TV. And
Mhm.
um, what happens is they get comfortable with it, but at the same time, what they're watching many times on the tube is very negative,
Yeah.
and it makes them feel even more um, uh, disjointed and more. And the fact of the matter is, more adult children come to us than retirees come to us looking for this kind of help. And it's very interesting how this is all metamorphosized. And I was wondering if you had any insights, especially from the travels that you've done, whether it be regional or even from Cuba.
Mhm.
Were there moments there where you said to yourself, you know what, maybe that's the breakthrough?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, there are definitely moments there, and when someone is in their pattern, we have an opportunity to interrupt that pattern. Bob, one of the things that I discovered on my journey, especially as it relates to really shifting the idea around joy, and that so many of us are going out there trying to find or seek joy from externally. And the core of what I truly believe is that joy is something inherent within all of us that we can activate and that we can create. And it's based on what I call these seven principles of joyful living. I think I touched on it briefly, is that joy is different for everyone. And that's the first principle. And the thing is by realizing that joy comes in all these different forms, it expands our possibilities. And sometimes it's a matter of just being introduced to a new possibility that opens up a chance to be able to experience something. It's like tasting something new that you haven't tasted before. The second another principle of joyful living is that sometimes we got to create space for joy, and especially for those who may not have already retired, where you have an abundance of time, where we're so busy. Unless we have that space for joy, that we can't really experience it because there's no room for it. Um, the main lesson, I think, in these principles is that, again, joy is available. It's in within us. But what are these moments, these discoveries of things that can activate that joy? And we call them joy activators. These can be as simple as trying something new. It could be a deep connection with someone, calling them on the phone that you haven't had a chance to be in touch in a while, or it could be just doing something kind with someone as well too. So the whole slew of those that I touch on in my work. And then on the flip side of that, there's experiences that get in the way of joy. And I think you kind of alluded to this, Bob, is that these are what we call joy blockers. These are those beliefs, those habits, those situations that hold us back from accessing that joy, because that joy is always there, but sometimes we have those clouds that get in the way of the sun. And those are a few of the key drivers of what can bring fulfillment in our lives. And especially as we step into retirement, when we do have that abundance of time, we don't have a roadmap, we don't have a framework to be able to say, oh, there's a new possibility.
Absolutely. Back to you, Reed.
So, Yasmin, as you had all of these experiences, what did that then lead you to write your book, The Game of Joy?
Yes. Well, I thought that upon completing my 2 year road trip that I was ready to write the book, but little did I know that it would take another 2 years of the pandemic and actually going inward. And because I thought, okay, well, if you want to create joy, and my book's called The Game of Joy, if you want to play the game of joy, you just got to do things that bring you joy, activate joy. But that was only half of the equation. The other half, which I think is actually more than the half, is how do we navigate the things that get in the way of joy, those joy blockers? How do we heal some of those relationships? How do we grow and expand from some of those beliefs? How do we discover that we're not alone as well, too? And so it took me a whole 2 years of going within to heal some of my relationships, heal some of my beliefs as well. And I still have plenty of them, but I feel like I'm at a point where now I could present and share a a method, a framework that's more comprehensive, more holistic. I think along the same way with retirement, how can we really support someone's well-being beyond just the financial or the legal, but incorporate the rest? And for me, it was really getting my arms around what joy is, at least my understanding of it, and then fully presenting it in a way where people have options. It's not just, oh, go out and be grateful, go out there and do something kind, or just be happy. I think they're missing out on so much else that is involved in the process of experiencing fulfillment.
I think you touched on this a little bit, Yasmin, but I wanted to ask you, why did you include the word the game? Why did you call it the game of joy?
Mm.
Why
Well,
did you
I
choose that term?
Yeah, because joy can be a very abstract concept. People want it, but they don't know how to get it or how to have it. And I think when we use the analogy of a game, within a game, there are rules. You can have agency over a certain outcome, at least to some aspects. Certain games are more luck oriented, certain skills, but at least it gives people an opportunity to say, "Oh, joy is actually accessible. And if I can understand how to play the game, then chances are I can create or I can have joy without it being circumstantial or happenstance where, well, I hope I'll have joy. It's like, no, you can actually create that joy. And that's why I chose the name, was to empower empower us to be able to say, hey, if I take the time to learn the game, I can actually have an opportunity to experience the outcome.
So, how did all of your work and your experience then get you involved in working in the area of retirement planning, and specifically the area of retirement planning, the non-financial side that links with the financial side that financial advisors talk a lot about? So, how did you kind of move into that space of working in the financial advice space?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, when I finally completed this book and had clarity on joy, I was thinking, well, what's next? And that was when I noticed my parents and noticed others who were on this journey really struggling in places of even despair as well. And so that's what sparked the curiosity to learn. And as I started to dive deep into many rabbit holes in the retirement world, that was when I realized that um, there was opportunities to introduce ways to incorporate joy and to support those on that journey. I think what Bob had mentioned earlier is that sometimes people really get stuck in their routines, in their habits, and and sometimes, and not always, it's difficult to help people change at that stage. However, if we can preempt that, if we can support those that are perhaps planning and getting ready for the retirement journey, there may be an opportunity to really influence a change for them where now they can incorporate some of the new possibilities beyond before some of those mindsets and habits get ingrained. And so that's when we started looking at the landscape of what does retirement planning look like. And interesting enough, I got a chance to speak with a number of financial leaders and talk with a number of retirees and look at the research, and especially a lot of the research read that you have accumulated, which is quite quite an incredible undertaking there. And I started to notice that the financial industry is continuing to evolve, and especially it's being disrupted, especially with the impact of technology and especially AI. And as I started to ask more questions, I started hearing concerns that, hey, some of the technical functions of financial organizations are potentially becoming commoditized. And so many of these leading organizations are really thinking about how can we be intentional about the ways in which we not only stay sustainable, but also how do we differentiate ourselves as well. Um, and then in talking with some retirees, I also discovered that for many clients, they're starting to ask questions like, well, how are you bringing value beyond just managing my money? I mean, for some, that's all they care about. Great. But for many others, between the annual reviews and few touch points here and there, they're like, where's my these fees going to? And I've even had my busin's partner, Kathleen, she's switched from one organization to another because she felt like she's not really getting any support beyond just here that let's review your numbers and looks like you're great. And so that was an interesting dynamic that I learned. And and then as we look at future generations, like we've got this big baby boomer population, but then we've got the Gen Xers coming up and we've got millennials on, behind them as well. We notice buying patterns. We start to notice also engagement patterns around needing to believe in what that company stands for, beyond just the service. Whether you buy your shoes, are they stewards of the environment and all that. And so we want to be mindful as to how does the planning world adapt in order to support upcoming demands and needs here. And realizing all of that, it helped me in talking with Kathleen and others. We realized that, wow, there's a gap within the industry in terms of implementing and incorporating the aspect of non-financial, planning into the planning process. And so that's what sparked it was realizing, okay, we want to help people become more joyful. How are those that are currently in touch with them in the planning process supporting them, and realize that there's a gap. And in fact, there's three different gaps that exist, that we have been really passionate and excited about filling.
And what are those gaps?
Glad that you asked, Bob. Yeah, we realize that there those three gaps that currently exist. Is the first gap is what's called, I call it the implementation gap. The second is the effectiveness gap, and the third is what we call the resource gap. The implementation gap exists because there's currently few tools out there. There are a number of leading organizations, those that believe in a more holistic approach beyond the legal and the finances, but more on the non-financial aspects. They're creating educational workshops. You're seeing some content that gets created, and then even a handful are using retirement coaches to support some of their clients. Then, so there aren't as many other options there because, quite frankly, this ties into the effectiveness gap, is that when it comes to these workshops, oftentimes we find that people who attend walk away thinking, well, what's next? I mean, that was great. I learned a lot, but how do I then take the next steps there? For those who have explored coaching, coaching is a fantastic support. However, not everyone's ready for coaching or is inclined for coaching, and then also as they put on various different events in the field, it's also limited to the number of people that are available to attend too. So that's the effectiveness gap. The resource gap really focuses on what's on a typical advisor's plate. I mean, in a typical, workload, you've already got your plate piled on. And so to ask someone to be trained hours and hours to coach a client, in addition to not being familiar with the context of it, that's a big ask. And as well as putting on different events. And so based on those different gaps, we realize that, hey, there's an opportunity to create tools as well as resources that are easy to be able to implement, to be able to introduce to clients and add that value without having to bring on a lot of responsibilities and investment of time and other resources too.
Do you find that the people in financial advisory roles, do you find that people talking this way, is it coming from the bottom up, or is it coming from the top down, or is it coming from the middle and around?
Yeah. I from what I've discovered, there's this acknowledgement that, yeah, that's important, but quite frankly, I think we're still in the very early stages within the industry where it's become a priority. And for those organizations that are really putting the flag, in the ground and saying, "Hey, this is what we stand for," I've noticed that it really comes from the top down. It comes from the leaders in the organizations that say, "Hey, this is not only a priority because it helps us differentiate ourselves, it helps us deepen our relationships with our clients. It helps us also retain the clients and also generate referrals. But that this is an opportunity to be able to really stand out in the marketplace. And but that also requires a significant systemic change within an organization.
Yeah.
Many organizations have been doing things forever. And to implement this change, sometimes it um, requires some directive from those that are in leadership roles. And the other aspect of it, Bob, is that we can have tools, we can have resources, but unless they are integrated within an organization's operating process, where it's part of an onboarding process or perhaps an annual review or various different touch points throughout a typical year, then those tools and resources may not necessarily be valuable if they're not integrated within an organization.
No, absolutely. Because the most astounding question that I could ask a someone who's coming in for a consult
Mhm.
is, can you describe for me what your new path to purpose is going to be after you leave the corporate world?
Mm.
And of course, you get dead silence
Mhm.
at that point. And that's really where their climb towards joy has to begin, because you have to relearn, as you know, you have to relearn and retool your outlook on life. And it's like you're in your early 20s again.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That outlook is so important. And for many people, if they've had an extended career, they've only had one outlook and one focus, and the relationships that they have, the the identity that they have is so fixed on that one thing. And all of a sudden, when you have this big change where you're no longer in that environment and you're no longer in that role, it's both disorienting as well as it can be an area of like, now what? Who am I?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Back to you, Reed.
So we've talked a lot about the why because I think for any professional, financial professionals and other professionals helping people transition into retirement, it's important to understand why would I want to do this. But I think the other thing that often holds back people from helping their clients is how can I help them? And we touched on that a little bit. And
Mhm.
I know you've created some tools for financial advisors, and I'd love you to share a couple of those tools with us. I think we can talk about the retirement assessment and then the retirement sandbox. So, do
Mhm.
you want to share some about those, Yasmin, or do you want to just talk about them? What would you prefer?
Yeah, be happy to share. I think sometimes
Okay.
seeing it really makes it
Yeah, absolutely.
land more as well too. And I'll share my screen and in just a second here. Let me get that going. You're right. I think that when we talk, we can talk about why all day long, but sometimes we've got to roll up the sleeves and dive into, well, then how do we do this? And as I mentioned with the gaps that exist up until this point, the how has been a workshop, some content, some coaching, but there's so much in between that's missing, and that's where we've developed the Retirement Innovation Lab, is that we are building and creating and sharing the hows then. And so let me share with
Yeah,
you our first how, which is the retirement assessment tool. And the reason why we created this tool is we realized that whenever you go on any journey, you got to have a map. I mean, nowadays, fortunately, we have GPS, but you also have to have a map to know where you are as well as where you're going. And I think part of the challenges that many people who prepare or who are on this retirement journey have have a hard time with is that they don't know what's out there. They don't know where they're at. And so this assessment tool helps us at least get a glimpse as to, okay, I know where I am, and I also know where I could go. It doesn't necessarily tell me exactly where I'm going to go, but at least I have that framework to be able to work with an advisor or a coach with. And so what we did is we developed this assessment tool that when someone goes through answers about 40 questions or so, it gives them that clarity. And we've created two versions, one for those who have already retired, as well as one for those who have yet to retire. And because we know that there's a different nuance between those who have already stepped across the threshold to be retired and not. So, for example, for someone who's yet to retire, in this particular version, when you go through, click on the button, enter your name and contact information, and you start these questions, what happens is upon completion, you get this comprehensive 40 plus page report that becomes your essentially your roadmap. And what we did is, as you go through this report, we are mindful of making sure that it helps you understand what stage you're in. Initially, when we rolled out the first version of this, we had high, medium, and low, and it was red, yellow, and green. And we realized that it didn't make people feel good about this report because they felt like,
Mm.
oh, I'm a failure. I'm in the yellow, I'm in the red. And that was counter to our intention of this tool, which is for people to be curious, to explore, and to collaborate. And so that's why we shifted it so that it became the discovery stage, the growth stage, and the thriving stage. And based on each of those different stages, there's a different nuance, there's a different purpose. And so in this case, in this sample report, we were in the growth stage. And so this then explains what that growth stage is about. And if someone else were to take this and they had a thriving stage, this would be a different information then. So this is the start of a more personalized experience because we realize so much of what's out there is very blanket, one size fits all, cookie cutter. And if we can get to the personalization of this, it becomes more meaningful. So as we dived into this report, now we're able to look at the different dimensions that impact the overall score. And so now we can look at personal growth. We can look at purpose, and we can say, wow, I've got a thriving score. I'm doing really well on that. But there's still another level. And then maybe some areas like, for example, leisure, where I've got 67. It just means that there's opportunities for curiosity and growth. So this gives you a sense of where you are in a deeper level. And then we also have what's probably familiar, the wheel, like a wheel of life. So how balanced are you across the various different dimensions? And the goal is to get more balance, but for some people, some areas may not be a priority. Here's where the interest, here's where we really dive deep, is that as we go through each of the dimensions, now based on what stage you're in, whether you're in thriving or growth or discovery, the content, the information here is specific to you. So it's got your name in here. In this case, it's got my name, and then also talks about the thriving versus the growth or the discovery. And then as you get into the next pages, it gives you some recommendations, some strategies to explore. And this isn't just a static list. This is um, this changes based on what stage you're in. So in this case, because I was in the thriving stage, these are some of the recommendations. If, for example, Reed, if you took this and you're in the growth, you'd have a different set of recommendations. So again, very personalized. Then we also have some resources to help you explore questions. We realize that questions are really the key to discovering possibilities, and sometimes we don't know what questions to ask. And so under physical health, we shared a few questions to ask. Maybe it's an advisor, maybe it's your friend or a coach as well. We also link these into popular articles. These are in our sandbox, which I'll share with you in a minute. But these are some insights that you can explore, book suggestions, as well as thought leaders for those that are curious in that aspect. And so as you flip through this report, now we dive into each of the other dimensions in a similar way: emotional well-being, family dynamics, social connections, purpose and identity. Same approach, same framework until you get to the end. And as you can see, this is a pretty comprehensive um, experience. And we also realize that this can also be overwhelming. And so that's where you have an opportunity to take this and have a conversation with a retirement coach that can help you debrief, certainly explore what the next steps are, and also have a conversation with your advisor as well. And upon sharing this tool, what we discovered, uh, discovered from financial advisors was, hey, is there a way to be able to take this tool, white label it, brand it so that it can be used within our organization and our clients? And so that's exactly what we did is we took this tool out of the box that we created. And then we've worked with some partners to be able to incorporate this within their organization. So, for example, one organization we worked with is Mission Wealth, and they have their own what they call 12 dimensions of wealth. So, we've adapted this tool to fit into their framework and to customize this so that this looks exactly like their website, their branding, their presence. And now this is a tool that they're able to introduce to new prospective clients as well as existing clients to use and to be able to add value. So they're taking this tool, applying the how to it, and implementing with their organization. And we've got a number of others that we're working with that have taken this approach to be able to deliver on that. So that's the assessment then.
And Yasmin, I think what's important about the assessment, both for just individuals who are taking it or for financial advisors who are offering it for their clients, is now that creates a different set of conversations between the client and the advisor, or from the advisor to talk with their clients directly. Because not only, if I'm understanding this correctly, not only does the client take it, but the advisor, if they're offering it, will see the results. So that then lead to me, what's important is it leads into different conversations, and it leads into conversations that aren't about the money,
Mhm.
but yet many of these, when we talk about the non-financial side of retirement, many of those decisions though do have a financial component.
Mhm.
But if the advisor is leading with the non-financial side and talking about that with the client, but then saying, from a financial perspective, here's how we're going to solve that problem. I think that creates just a very different client experience, if you will.
Mhm.
For it again, from the client's perspective, then it's not about, they're not talking about asset allocation and returns. They're talking more about the return on life and what's going to lead to a better life in the future. And I think that's what to me is really important about the assessment, is it leads to greater conversations between the advisor and the client.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am also aware that there may be some that are thinking, okay, this is great. I can introduce this to my clients. But then what if they start asking me questions of things that I don't know? How do I even then support them? I don't want to look stupid
Yeah.
and I don't want to, but then how do I, and that was part of the impetus to create what we called the retirement sandbox here. But before we created it, I had to wrap my arms around what is entailed in this retirement journey. Because if you were to do a Google search or go on YouTube, you'd be there for years going through the information trying to figure out where the pieces fit. And so what we actually did is we actually mapped out the landscape of what all the pieces, how all the pieces fit together in the retirement experience. And of course, continues to evolve. But what I did is go through and identify the three primary buckets in which this journey happens. And then based on this, then what were some of the subtopics that happen within each of these? And then what were some of the topics below those topics as well? And by going through this exercise and literally mapping out the different nuances of this retirement experience, then what we're able to do then is have a container, a framework, a structure in which now we can go out there and start to curate and create content and build this retirement sandbox. And let me go through a different view here because um, because there's a lot of stuff on the side that can get a bit can get overwhelming here. Okay. So within the sandbox, what we did is we took this map and then we created what's called the Wisdom Center. And what the Wisdom Center is, imagine a department store where you can get anything you want that's related to retirement. And so, for example, let's say that you were curious about something related in the relationship field. And more specifically, you were curious to explore caregiving then. Now, let's say that you had a client that is says, "Hey, I'm taking care of my elderly parents, or maybe they're going through that experience, and you didn't know anything about much about that." Now you can quickly go through and find various different pieces of information, some content here that you can either quickly learn, or you can also share these pieces of content with those clients. Not the entire sandbox, but just those different nuggets. I had a friend that was struggling with having a very needy parent that they're going through that, and every time she would be like, "Oh, my TV's not working." They'd have to run over and fix their TV remote. Well, now there's this tool, there's this resource, and I know this kind of ties into read some of your projects in identifying
Yeah.
resource that can help them stay connected. We have podcast episodes, we have articles that we've created and curated. And so this becomes a way for, let's say, an advisor to very quickly find information or share content and resources that are maybe valuable for their clients without having to know all of this. It's a like a almost like a cheat sheet thing. We also realize that sometimes we don't know what we're looking for, and that's where we developed what's called the Journey Center, because there are common journeys that we've discovered many people experience. Maybe they're on a journey of looking for purpose, or maybe you're on a journey for you're experiencing loneliness or a health challenge. Whatever that journey is, we've also curated and content where you're able to discover insights related to that journey. You're also able to discover stories as well as tools and resource then to support those on that particular journey. So it's another way to access the vast information that's out there in an organized way. We're also really mindful that because some of this content that's out there can be long and take a lot of time to go through, what we've done is we've actually developed a process using technology and AI to be able to summarize all of this content. So, for example, a podcast episode that may be, let's see, in this case, 51 minutes long. You might not have 51 minutes, but you can quickly go through and scan through this and get to the gist of some of the things that might be valuable for you or a client, and to be able to go and listen to that. So we've done that for all the podcast episodes we've curated, the videos we've curated, as well as books too, which there are tons of books out there, and quite frankly, books take a while to go through. And so we've curated over 100 different books related to retirement. And in addition to that, we developed a process to be able to summarize these books so you can quickly get the gist of it at an overview or the chapter level. And even for those who prefer to listen, we have an audio version
To Love Midlife by Chip
of these summaries so that you can be able to grab what you need. You can purchase the book as well, or maybe you can go back and review that. Um, in addition to this, so it's a resource center, but in addition to this, the other resource is the breadth of tools that we have available. We've already gone through the assessment tool, but there's a whole suite of other tools that really can support clients where they're at. So, for example, asking, "Hey, what do you want to do when you retire?" And one of the common answers we get is, "Well, I want to travel, play with the grandkids, or play golf." Well, what about all these other tools, all these other activities? And so this helps not only the clients but also the advisor brainstorm these experiences. And I'm going to open up this tool real quick. We won't go through too much of it, but in this activities activator tool, when you take it and you complete it, um, what you get is internet's a little bit slow. You get your results, your report, where it showcases what are some of the activities that you want to do, but it also asks you questions as to things that help you get started with that activity. It activates that experience. Now, for the retiree or the client, this is really useful because now you're getting them to take action. Change happens when you take action, not just when you learn something. But also, what's unique about this, and Reed, you've been instrumental in helping us evolve this tool, is we've created where this becomes both valuable for the client as well as the advisor. Because now, when you generate the report, let's say that you want to do some writing. Now the advisor then can click on the download financial planning questions, and now they have specific questions they can ask their clients that are related to the financial aspect of this that then can tie back into their financial planning process then. And so this then becomes even more of an interactive experience where now they're also relating it back to their area of expertise uh, in something that they may not have originally had expertise in. So this is that's a quick brief overview. I'm happy to give a more detailed demo of the rest of this, but it's also a community space to be able to connect with other professionals, coaches, and others that can support you on this aspect of this journey that you might not necessarily feel comfortable or familiar with coming right in.
Yeah, those are fantastic tools, Yasmin, for both individuals and for financial advisors. Again, to provide those actionable steps. It's one thing just to go through, give them the assessment, but then what does that assessment lead into? What areas of their life do people want to or need to work on? So those are great tools. So I want to share your contact information, Yasmin, but before I do that, is there anything else you'd want to cover today as we close the episode? Any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean we've covered a lot in our time together today, and I think the main message that I'd love for everyone to walk away with is that in this chapter of our lives, we are blessed with hopefully an abundance of time. And hopefully, with that abundance of time, we can create more experiences of joy with it. And in order to do so, there's an opportunity to reach out for support from advisors and others who can provide us with ways that we can either activate that joy or in many cases help us shift from experiences that are blocking our joy. And a lot of those things that are blocking is a lack of clarity, a lack of feeling supported, established mindsets that we might have. And so, if we can partner with those that are already helping us in one aspect of our lives, where we can then experience more fulfillment, then I think it's a rich relationship that only helps everyone thrive, especially on the business side, when you're helping people really live a fulfilling life. I think the return on that is quite amazing.
And as Bob and I have talked about now for, I think, quite a few years, Bob, more and more people are becoming aware of not only the importance of planning for life and retirement, but the challenges that come with
Mhm.
planning for life and retirement. So I think the reasons for wanting to plan for this are becoming more evident, but it's then connecting people to the right tools to support their journey. And again, that could be personal coaching, that could be tools for financial advisors or HR people, that could be providing seminars. There's lots of ways to do this. So I just hope that the message is coming through to our viewers is that the tools are out there. You may need to look a little bit, but feel free to contact Bob or Yasmin or myself, and we can help point you in the right direction to the right tools for your particular situation, your particular business. So I want to share Yasmin's contact information because we shared a lot of information. There's a lot more on Yasmin's platform that he could give you a personal tour on to dig into it deeper. We didn't have time to get into each of those today, so I'll pull up Yasmin's contact slide. There it is. So Yasmin's websites, I think the best one, Yasmin, you said was Retirement Innovation Lab.
Mhm. Yes, that's a great starting point, especially as a financial professional, to be able to explore what are some of the possibilities, and happy to follow up with the conversation. Joyful Living Project for those who are more curious about the journey that I experienced and the lessons learned. There's a lot of great resources and also stories and blog content on there. And then we also have a podcast that we're getting ready to launch the second season, where it's called The Real Retirement Show, where we interview both retirees as well as experts and professionals that are navigating the retirement journey.
Well,
Perfect.
Yasmin, you've done a fantastic job. You've taken research and you've taken thought, and now you put it into many tools, and we really commend you for that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Bob. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, feel free to reach out to Yasmin to learn more because we just only covered the basics here today. There's so much more that he has uncovered and learned and is included on his websites. Again, his book is The Game of Joy: The Secrets to Creating Your Own Happiness, even when life is stressful. Yasmin's email, you can even book time through his calendar at retirementinnovationlab.com/chat. And you see his phone number there if you'd want to contact him directly.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Retirement Innovation Lab. Yeah. Uh, Reed, both you and Bob have been such an instrumental within this industry in helping shift the conversation, and also creating a movement around the importance of the non-financial aspects. And I'm just really honored to share this conversation with you, and be in partnership with you in helping us continue to bring more awareness and hopefully adoption to something that we truly believe is can make a difference in people's lives as well as our businesses too.
Yep, absolutely. Bob, any final thoughts before we sign off?
As you said, Yasmin, we're at the pioneering stage in all of this, and we're all trying to go down a number of different paths to find the right one. But the fact of the matter is, there are several right ones. We just have to be consistent about it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so stay in touch. Don't be a stranger, and
Absolutely.
we commend you for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So thank you everybody for joining us on today's episode. We'll see you next time when we continue exploring retirement and longevity planning beyond the numbers.